Are people going to speculate about my genitalia? There are a lot of men trying to make it scary, trying to talk white male teenagers off the alt-right ledge. The worst men, boys will be boys. Misogyny, male supremacist manosphere, Andrew Tate, anti-feminist, vicious misogyny, mocking my voice, gendered attacks, the men who threaten me, straight white men, semen on my faith.
Bitch.
Rachel Gilmore. Man, this broad really hates men. So much so that she's willing to get into a parliamentary meeting with tens of people to talk about how bad we all are. She goes from Andrew Tate to Pierre Poilievre to claiming men are trying to kill her. Check out the chapters below the video for each topic of discussion. Smash that like button to trigger this strikingly large fembot. Consider subscribing. It's gonna get ugly, and I'm not sorry.
All right. So a few months back, I came across a research paper that I found deeply chilling. The study was published in June in the journal Gender and Education by Emilia Sandau and Luke Cousineau. And it was titled, quote, "Trying to Talk White Male Teenagers Off the Alt-Right Ledge and Other Impacts of Masculinist Influencers on Teachers." The researchers used data collected from the teachers subreddit community on reddit.com to dig into how those users described the influences of a resurging misogyny on the jobs of teachers and in the classrooms. It turns out teachers are being bombarded with the rhetoric these kids are learning from the worst men on the internet. The researchers found that students are actively parroting male supremacist rhetorics at school, and that is serving to devalue women teachers and make classrooms less safe. They found that it influences gender dynamics in the classroom to the point that a male faculty member said the way his female colleagues are treated makes him wonder if they're, quote, teaching in the same school. The teachers face degrading, awful comments from the boys in their class. A lot of it is terminology straight from the manosphere space, like boys calling all women and girls holes, and any boy who is kind to girls a simp. Beyond impacting the gender dynamics in their classrooms, the teachers also raised genuine safety concerns that arose because of the stuff these kids were consuming online. Here's what one teacher had to say about a student who had been influenced by manosphere influencer Andrew Tate.
Hold up. Let's check those sources real quick. I mean, you've been given time in Parliament from our tax-paying dollars, so if you're advocating for something, we gotta do our fact checks here. Something you failed to do at CTV, which led to your firing. You quote Emilia Sandau and then reference a Reddit post that's dedicated to hating men. Wow, exceptional journalism there, bubblehead. So Emilia is an educator. She teaches young children of our future. Her interests lie at, quote, the intersection of anti-2S LGBTQ+ movements and K-12 education. Her current research examines the impact of parental rights groups on the education system. Through her work, she aims to leverage academia in support of queer activism. The Reddit thread you're referring to was a post of Emilia's paper titled Trying to Talk White Male Teenagers Off the Alt-Right Ledge and Other Impacts of Masculinist Influencers on Teachers. This is nothing more than an opinion piece. This fake scholar who probably got her diploma out of a box of Fruit Loops is critical of men discovering their own masculinity. She's just upset that it's not the masculinity that she likes or that she approves of, which is a culture of femboys. Well, Rachel, you're 0 for 1 for citing a queer activist as your first reference, not exactly an unbiased source. Maybe her citation on this paper will help to lend credence to her validity. We have Dr. Salsabel Almanssori, another educator who specializes in Andrew Tate? Well, they say correlation doesn't equal causation, but I'm beginning to see a slight pattern here. Salsabel is basically a leftist activist. So we began with a socially biased source, and now we're getting into a politically motivated one? My God, Rachel. You know what? If I look past the dozy expressions, fake laughs, frizzy hair, and soulless eyes, nope, never mind. Still no intelligence in your brain. Not only is Salsabel perfectly okay with mocking dead people, i.e. Robin Williams, a couple days after he passed, but she also enjoys shaming white people. Robin Williams supported Israel and the invasion/occupation of Afghanistan. Pathetic. Americans are so damn selfish. I've never read an article on Iraq that hasn't been from their view. We're still paying for the damage. F you. I'm not going to read every single one of these, but I'll leave them on screen. There's one in particular that I want to highlight though, where she reposted a free Free Palestine user back in 2016, where she quoted, "It's wrong to compare a United States president to Hitler, not because it's an exaggeration, but because it's backwards." This article, written by someone named Manila Rice, in essence insinuates that Donald Trump's ideology is what inspired Hitler. So basically claiming that anybody who voted for Donald Trump voted for someone worse than Adolf Hitler. It says, "It's wrong to compare a United States president to Hitler, not because it's an exaggeration, but because it's backwards. American policy inspired Hitler, not the other way around. Adolf Hitler was a student of U.S. history, developing his concept of concentration camps and genocide from the American policy of reservation, creation, and the near extermination of our native population. The concept of a master Aryan race didn't come from Hitler, but from American scientists whose work in eugenics shaped national policies of forced sterilization, segregation, and marriage restrictions. Hitler merely brought to Europe what America had been doing for centuries. Donald Trump is the rightful successor of that centuries-long legacy, not a new danger." You have a school educator reposting something that basically paints Hitler as not really that bad of a guy. Fantastic. The exact person who should be educating impressionable young minds. And further to your argument that boys in schools are parroting Andrew Tate, what you fail to realize is that this is what Gen Z kids refer to as memes. Simp is basically the new in today's society. It's used as a way to basically poke fun at other guys. It's what male friends do to each other. We're not all sensitive like you little crybaby girls who are up there telling men and boys what's in their own self-interest. All right, I think that's enough for now. With all that in mind, now you may speak, woman.
Quote, "I had a student write a paper in graphic detail about how SA victims, sexual assault victims, deserved it, and all women were asking for it, and a lot of other extremely alarming sentiments. The paper topic was nowhere close to anything like this, but he wrote it anyway."
Based.
So what you're saying is that a boy who wrote a paper expressing his feelings and opinions is now a threat to society? It's people like you feminists, and especially those in education, who have been character bashing these young men into believing that they're predators. You say they're threats, dangerous, toxic, and rapists, then you get surprised when they actually start expressing those very sentiments. Don't you think that a slight disdain toward women is a realistic outcome when they've been character assassinated prior to them even being born? All you seem to advocate for is the harshest laws for men and sympathy toward women. This feminist approach destroys everything it touches. It's how Canada ends up with liberal bills that stiffen punishments for men because of their gender. In this National Post article, it says, quote, "Tuesday's bill also introduces the term femicide into the criminal code. I'm 100% for harsher punishments for every violent criminal, but to give women preferential treatment when it comes to law is obviously unfair and discriminatory. Liberals claim on one hand that women are strong and independent, but yet they write laws that are built upon the premise that women are more vulnerable and can't protect themselves against men. We call that liberal hypocrisy. It's even worse when you consider that just a little over a month ago, the Supreme Court of Canada struck down a mandatory minimum proposal for child predators. Okay, so you're all right with protecting men as long as it's only the ones that are touching kids. Great justice system we have, eh?"
The research went on to highlight different approaches the teachers had discussed for addressing this phenomenon, but it was clear that overall, there was no consensus on what works. Beyond that, some administrators told teachers that approached them with concerns that boys will be boys.
There you go. You just did it again. Shaming someone for pointing out that boys are born with masculine traits. Yeah, boys will be boys. And you'd be surprised, Rachel, or maybe even horrified if you heard how men talk when women aren't around. Men express themselves much differently than women. That's biological. Just because you don't like the way men talk sometimes doesn't mean that you get to control the narrative of the conversation in every scenario. I'm sure there's plenty of conversations that happen between women which they consider private that men aren't allowed to question, nor would we even want to. It's nothing but double standards with you guys. You're not capable of understanding what men feel, Rachel, so stop using your feelings to dictate how they're supposed to act.
Despite everything I just described, the reason that I wanted to share this study and these anecdotes is because it gave me a very chilling, overarching realization, which is that these testimonies from teachers are akin to if you were standing on a beach and the water suddenly receded very quickly and very significantly. When that happens, it's an early warning sign of a tsunami. And that's how I felt about that study, because these boys are young right now. They're saying and doing these things in classrooms, but they're going to grow up and they're going to bring these ideologies into the broader world.
You're right. They are going to grow up. They will mature and become men who have control of their feelings and emotions, unlike you. Just because men choose to express ourselves differently doesn't mean that we're going to terrorize the world. You're characterizing men's interests in order to attempt to validate a study, which isn't even a real study. It's just a bunch of liberal drones shouting at each other on Reddit about how much they hate Andrew Tate. That would be like me saying women who watch 50 Shades of Grey are going to start hunting down billionaires to get raped by.
That's why I am so glad that you're studying this issue of anti-feminist ideology, as thanks to a confluence of factors, including the advent of social media, incompetent moderation from tech giants, and manosphere influencers' creation of soft entry points for a more radical ideology. Academics I've spoken to have said that anti-feminist ideology is experiencing a resurgence because, unfortunately, it is nothing new. While experts like Luke Cousineau and Emilia Sandau would be better placed to speak to the literature and studies on these topics, I can attest to some of the real-life experiences of encountering this ideology.
Ooh, now we're getting into the meat and potatoes of it. I get excited when feminists share their victimhood.
As someone who exists prominently online as an outspoken woman, I often intersect with these virulently anti-feminist spaces and ideologies. That means, unfortunately, I have had firsthand interactions with the vicious misogyny these ideologies make manifest. Often, the white nationalists I cover who spew racist and transphobic vitriol don't have the kindest words for women either.
I have no idea what this broad is referring to, but do go on.
As a female journalist who exposes them, I've therefore found myself on the receiving end.
That's what she said.
Of that hate.
Journalist? I still don't get it, to be honest. Sorry, Rachel, but Bubble Pop? It's a lame podcast that only radical feminists watch, where they all clap and go, "Good job, Rachel. Trump bad. Trans all kids." You're no more a journalist than the staff at DQ is Canadian.
Harassers have engaged in softer tactics like mocking my voice and turns of phrases to dismiss my work. They swarm whenever I receive career opportunities, spreading often unspecific and gendered attacks against my character, hoping to intimidate those who would think to offer me such opportunities in the future. At times, like with respect to a CTV fact-checking job, it works. In fact, after my last committee appearance, the manner in which I spoke was mocked by several of these same voices as evidence that I was unqualified for the honor of testifying before Parliament. If you're uncomfortable hearing some of these stories, like the time that a man photoshopped semen on my face and circulated it around the internet, you can only imagine how uncomfortable it is to live this. So I am very glad that, once again, you guys are studying this, and I can only hope that I'll be of some service today in helping to answer your questions. Thank you.
Okay, we all experience hate in the online world, Rachel. You put yourself out there, so you have to deal with the consequences of your notoriety. The fact that your entire shtick is based on hatred toward the right is the reason why you get so much pushback. If you did just simple political commentary instead of pushing the message that everyone on the right is Hitler or boys being boys is dangerous, then you wouldn't get negative feedback. You take your platform to the extreme left, advocating for the censorship of people you disagree with, demonizing those who have different opinions. It's just a massive grift and you know it. You farm conservative outrage in order to get your clicks. I'd wager that most of your following and viewership is from people that really don't like you. They just enjoy watching you make a fool of yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I worry constantly about the impact that seeing the vitriol that I face has on young women who are watching and following my journalism. It is one of the things that makes me the most sad because I never want anyone, I want to inspire young women. I don't want them to see what I'm going through and think, oh, you know what, I couldn't live with that. I couldn't do that. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it's easy. I've had to change how I live my life. There's things that I cannot do that I used to do.
Quoi?
Like when I have friends over, I tell them that they can't take any photos that show out of my windows. I'm very cautious about sharing live locations when I'm moving around. I used to go out dancing sometimes, maybe have a couple drinks. Now I'm usually in bed early and rarely have more than 2 drinks just because I'm afraid of being in any way out of control in public, lest one of my harassers or the men who have threatened me show up in person. It's even impacted my partner's a musician, and I've had individuals show up at his concerts to film me and harass me. And so I even have to be cautious sharing that part of my life and you know, if I'm ever moving around. So there's tons that I have to do, and it's very unpleasant.
Oh, Rachel, you act like you're so special because you have a following on social media. You act like you're the female Justin Bieber who can't go anywhere without being mobbed by crazy lunatics. If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. Actually, never mind. Stay in the kitchen. That's where you belong. It's more fun that way. And you're trying to get a following of young girls to emulate your behavior? What a threat to society that would be. To have a bunch of scowling trolls marching around would be an absolute nightmare. You know, not all women think the way you do. The biggest female political influencer in Canada is Jasmine Lane. She has a massive following, is an actual journalist, interviewed the likes of Pierre Poilievre, and is inspiring young girls to aim higher and not believe the false victimhood mentality that you project to your uninformed followers. She didn't get to where she is because she had to fight against men. She didn't get there in spite of men. Her notoriety is a result of people opening their eyes to common sense, and teaches young women that people like you can't poison their minds. And you wouldn't believe the number of young women in Canada who are actually based. This next generation is gonna scare the crap out of you, because all these men that you're complaining about, this tsunami, well, chicks dig that. Because they're not into feminine sissies who cower because of words. They don't want a submissive man. They want a giga chad. Sorry, Rach. Truth hurts.
There are going to be young women who see my experience and choose not to go into the profession that I am in, which breaks my heart. And I think it's why people do this. I think it's why I deal with the harassment I deal with, in part because people want there to be fewer voices that aren't straight white men in journalism. And, you know, I tick most of those privilege boxes in general, but it's just, I do think that there is a desire to silence people doing journalism in the way that I'm doing it, and the fact that I'm an outspoken young woman, and, well, youngish. And, you know, I just think that it's devastating to think of that, and that's why I also try to project strength and show that this isn't stopping me, and that if they ever choose to go into journalism, that there is a whole community of women who will have their back, but there are a lot of men trying to make it scary.
Well, Rachel, why don't you come back to championing women when you can actually define what a woman is? You make the claim that people like you hold no power, but yet, how often do you see conservative political commentators in these parliamentary committee meetings? How many conservative influencers were hired by mainstream media corporations? I'd say you're doing pretty well for yourself, Rach. I think what you want to believe is that men are holding women back from opportunities. Well, one could make the same claim about OnlyFans as well. How many famous male OnlyFans models can you name? Where's their space, Rachel? Where's our male representation in the online monetized virtual prostitution market?
Yeah, I mean, I've been horrified seeing the virulent transphobic rhetoric that has been spread through society. I mean, even some politicians in our House of Commons have been saying disturbing things that have gotten them condemned by Egal Canada and other organizations. I mean, Pierre Poilievre's comments about trans folks have been egregious, saying that he's only aware of two genders.
Well, he's right. A majority of the entire planet knows that there's only two genders. It's not even gender anyway. That's a made-up term coined by John Money to basically justify the mutilization of children. He did an experiment on twins. Bruce Reimer was raised as a girl and Brian as a boy. They didn't tell Bruce about his sex change, which included the removal of his genitals. Bruce ended up committing suicide because, like most cases of gender transition, they end up regretting it and suffering irreparable consequences. So if you're basing your argument on a child predator, that's fine by me. You do you, girl. But I think I found the problem with the identity crisis that you have with your audience. You don't know the difference between boys and girls. Maybe you should just be a good woman and shut your mouth when it comes to these discussions. Come back when you're on planet Earth.
And I think that one of the massive issues within this is you're ultimately not only, all of our rights are intertwined, and when you adjudicate the presentation of gender for, say, going to the bathroom, what you are doing is adjudicating who is going to be harassed in that bathroom. I'm a 6-foot-tall woman. If I go pee and there's a bathroom ban, are people going to speculate about my genitalia?
Yes, Rachel. When you go take a piss, there's people wondering, hey, she didn't have a penis when she walked in there, did she? Now, I'll agree with you that you're built like a linebacker, but it's not people like you who we get mad at for entering women's spaces. It's men pretending to be women. It's usually very obvious. Surgery has gotten better over the years, I guess, so it's a little bit more convincing. But a biological man should not enter the women's bathroom. Period. No pun intended. Plus, transgenderism is a mental illness anyway that needs to be taken seriously. You're not doing any service to young men or women who are confused about their identity or sexuality. Much of this trans nonsense was a trendy fad for a few years, but thankfully it's starting to die down. Less children are being confused, and like all things trendy, when too many people start taking part in it, it dies down pretty quickly. And go ahead and call me a transphobe. I wear that title like a badge of honor. I love it.
Am I going to be harassed when I'm just trying to use the washroom? Anyone who doesn't present in a very effeminate way is going to face questions and harassment. They are open to that.
No. Men who go into women's spaces face harassment. And were you ever questioned before, Rachel? Back in the mid-2000s, did anybody ever say, "Hey, there's a large man going in the women's bathroom"? Oh, never mind, guys. It's only Rachel. This was never an issue until people like you created this insane ideology and ran with it. Back in the day, you probably would have screamed if you went to take a shit and some dude started taking a piss in the stall next to you.
So it's not only rigorously enforcing,
Come on, try getting it out.
the forms of gender expression that exist in our society, but also, even among cis women, they are going to be harassed for this. So all of our rights are intertwined, and it is essential that we fight for all of them.
So you're allowed to characterize all women with the made-up titles of cis, but we can't call trans women men? So what you're saying is it's okay for you to assign labels, but it's not okay for people with common sense to point out the idiocy of yours. Got it. Ask any woman, Rachel, okay? This simple question, and only request a yes or no. Just ask them, would you be okay if someone with a penis came into the women's bathroom with you? I think the answer might surprise you.
Anti-DEI is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. You're opposing diversity and equity and inclusion.
Absolutely, 100%. DEI needs to die. It's a detriment to everybody. The foundation of DEI is predicated on a lie that states members of a, quote, marginalized class can't get opportunities on their own, so we must lower the standards of achievement in order for them to get a fair shake. It's like having a group of 10 people in a race, 9 white and 1 black. I know the black guy would win, but for argument's sake, DEI states that the black man must begin at the halfway point of the track because he's black. That's DEI in a nutshell. It's discriminatory and racist against essentially everyone who's not white, and it's also blatantly open racism against white people as well. It's the only form of racism that's widely accepted by society. Well, crazy liberals who control every facet of society.
Why? What is wrong with any of those things? I think that there's a fundamental misunderstanding of how DEI operates in Canada as well. We tend not to use quotas, which is the aspect that is often attacked as, privileging certain groups over others. What we tend to do is just do audits of workplaces to ensure that everyone is having equality of opportunity. And I think that to attack these notions is a dog whistle to the worst elements of society that are seeing us slide towards a more fascistic world, and every politician who engages in that should be ashamed of themselves.
So, the person who wants to control speech, advocates for silencing men, and wants the government to basically erase men who follow Andrew Tate is crying about fascism. How ironic. You do nothing but harm with your platform, Rachel. Aside from giving people like me content to make fun of you with, all the other stuff is performative identity politics that you actually suck at. You don't know the first thing about journalism. You actually spread misinformation and lie to people. You're a groveling gargoyle with the intelligence of a fetus. You don't know anything about economics, sociology, politics, or Canadian society. You haven't lived amongst those who have different experiences. You haven't spoken to real people in Canada. I have. That's why I don't have to perform like all you show clowns in these political movements. I speak the truth. I've been in the dirt, and I've seen the worst that this country has to offer. And the things you're describing are nothing close to it. I don't have an agenda. You guys do. I don't have to grift or play nice for my party. You do. I can criticize my own side. You refuse to. You're incapable of hearing opposing arguments without a prior trigger warning, or you'll break down and cry. And just so we're clear, I don't advocate for anybody putting semen on your face. That's a waste of sperm.